the forecast. Time for another weather update. We'll start with the sea surface anomaly graph, the way that I always do. Now, since last week, we've had the very cold water that was in the Bering Sea here that I noted last time dissipate because it's feeding through here in the undercurrents down this northern Pacific current down through Canada and through America here. As you can see, it's getting a little bit colder here through this area just off the coast of America. The equator is still cold, obviously, as it was last week, although not quite as cold. But this area here is starting to get a lot colder as well, which means that the trades are starting to strengthen, which means the high pressure systems are sort of down here, and they're just feeding these southeasterly winds in this sort of direction from about here, and dragging up the cold water from the subsurface. So at this stage, we're definitely seeing the cooling come on. I still favour a weak La Nina at this stage. It'll be cooler than normal for the next 6 months. How cool will depend on how strong the trades get. Whether we get a fully blown La Nina or not is still up in the air, but I think we'll probably have a weak one at this stage. But again, within 4 weeks we should know as the trades start to strengthen and we see the response from that. But it's definitely getting cooler, and there's a lot of water in the subsurface here that's quite cold, so you should start to see, I want to see this area get really cold in the next 2 weeks to hopefully look like this with some minus threes in this area here, and that should ensure that it will cool down any warmth that's in the subsurface here and then feed back underneath in the undercurrents and be lifted to the surface with a southeasterly trade. So it's still looking good at this stage. Our negative IOD, which I'll touch on in a minute, which again is warm water here off the coast of Australia, is still looking good. The water's still warmer than normal. Now again, as I stressed last week, there is a lot of warm water here near the Philippines and Indonesia in the subsurface. There's very warm water, which is feeding down through the Indonesian flow through and will end up here in the next probably between 4 and 8 weeks. It'll be around this area here. You should start to see a decent warm up. Now, it's obviously colder here at the moment. That's simply because there's been so much rain and cloud bands streaming in from the northwest, which has cooled the temperature down. But don't worry about that. The water's coming. The warm water's here, and it'll be there within the next 4 to 8 weeks. So you'll see a big warm up here. This sort of temperature that you can see here where the high pressure system is located, that'll be the same sort of temperature that we see here. And we may even start to see a bit of yellowish 2 to 3 degrees above normal here. So the models are right onto it now. The negative ID is looking very good. So it's all systems go. If you look at the latest forecast from the Bureau of Meteorology, everyone should know that I do my own seasonal forecasts. All of a sudden, the Bureau of Meteorology are going for a very wet 3 months from July to September, especially for southeastern Australia, with an 80% chance of exceeding the average rainfall and pretty much 60% chance for the rest of the country. So it's looking very good at this stage. Now, a lot of people will say, how did I... Oh, I've been forecasting this for a while. Well, climate models are a little bit different. They don't see things till the last minute, so we can sort of, as people, we can sort of see logic and see what's going to happen. Obviously, we had a dry summer with a lot of blocking, with a El Nino type event. Even though it wasn't El Nino, we had the weather that represented the El Nino. But again, there's got to be a response to a dry situation, and we had quite a dry 9 months. So that was the obvious response, and now it's coming on. And if we look at the month-to-date rainfall, you can see it's really coming on. We've got 200 to 300% above normal for most of New South Wales, half of South Australia, pretty much 3/4 of Victoria. Let me just check, and we'll go to the Murray-Darling Basin and have a good look at that. And there you go. There's the month-to-date, and bear in mind we're only 21st of June. So we've still got another 10 days to go, even though we're not going to expect any significant rain, although there's a big east coast load. It's probably going to produce a lot of rain along this area here where they haven't had much rain on the coast. So, still 9 days to go, so we still should see some more rain. So, again, very positive, a good response, and exactly what you'd expect, as I've been suggesting since February, that we would have this response. And we started in May in this region. Didn't really carry through to this region here, but now it has. So we're starting to see all this area right from the northwest down through the southeast increase the rainfall, which is good. And obviously the Bureau agree, and they've seen the tea leaves, and they can see what's coming. And the next 3 months looks quite wet. And if we go to latest GFS, you can see it here in action. This is the next 2 weeks precipitation forecast, and again, just so much rain, very close to the mainland for this time of year. given it's a dry season. But look at this. I mean, we've got 8 or 9 inches of rain forecast in this area here, which again is our negative IOD breeding ground. When this water warms up in the next 8 weeks, you're going to start to see all this convection and rain just streaming into the country. Now you're starting to see the response. The rain's actually making it into the interior. And we'll start to feed down to this sort of area here in the next few weeks. So this is a really positive outlook here, and sort of vindicates my my wetter than normal forecast. The southern annular mode, I'll talk about this a little bit, pretty much in the forum more than anything, but the southern annular mode has a negative and positive value. Now when it's negative, basically in a nutshell, I'll keep it in layman's terms, the polar westerlies, they spread out from Antarctica and push up towards the mainland of Australia. So in other words, we get a lot more colder air and wet weather than we normally would have, whereas when it's a positive figure, we have lots of dry weather because the westerlies contract towards Antarctica. And if we look at March, remember March was hot and dry. The SAM, as we call it, the Southern Annular Mode, or the Antarctic Oscillation, was at a value of +3 and was plus for a good 6 weeks here. And we had very little rain in this time frame. All we had was blocking highs over Australia. Polar westerlies were contracting towards Antarctica. They had no chance of getting up here, no cold air, and little rain. Now, obviously, since we started to go negative in the middle of May, we started to see the response of the rainfall. Next 10 days, it's already negative, but next 10 days, we're expecting it to go heavily negative, as the models show here. So we can expect some good rain in the next fortnight, and some wet weather. So that looks pretty promising. And again, here's the response here. All this rain the GFS is seeing in this area, that's because the cold fronts and the cold air are making it up a lot further towards the mainland, which is good, because if you've got all this rain here, which is in the West Coast Trough, you really want it to be picked up by a cold front or a low pressure system here, and it will drag it all down and produce a lot of rain through South Australia and Victoria and New South Wales. So this is a good sign that GFS is seeing here tonight. It's putting a lot of rain here, which means a lot of fronts are coming up. And now I've actually got this here, which is for about 10 days time. You can see this is the cold air, this blue line here that's coming up from Antarctica, and you can see it's making it well north of where it normally is. So this is good, where things are starting to move, and this is what you'd expect with this cold air pushing up. Again, interacting with all this rain that's coming in from this area here in the West Coast Trough. So now that's a pretty good sign. Lastly, I wanted to I'll just show you the global temperatures for the month. Again, we're at negative 0.08. Last time we checked, it was negative 0.011. So we're just barely moving, maybe climbing by 0.012 a week, but not really much. So again, just slightly negative. Nothing really to speak of. It's much colder than normal, as you can see here, for a lot of Australia, which is significant, and much warmer than normal over the northern part of Australia. But I think that'll shift, and you'll start to see this cold will cover the entire country in the next 3 months. But we'll wait and see how that goes, but I think that's how it's going to turn out. And the other thing to note is all this cold from this record sea ice in Antarctica. Have a look at how cold this is. We're talking about 12 degree temperatures below normal, just on the Antarctic sea ice, just off the continent there. So it's an enormous amount of cold air, and colder than normal water here. So basically what it means is, if the cold fronts manage to make it up to this sort of area here, at the moment these are highs. This high here this is warmer here because there's a high sitting here. So whether that cold air can jam up in between somewhere, or there can be a blocking situation to let it through, remains to be seen. But it is a good sign for the depths of winter that we're starting to see. Look at these temperatures here, even on this side of the country, and you can see Africa is really copping the brunt of the cold at the moment. Quite warm in South America, but in contrast, have a look at that, the separation between the cold there and the warmth of South America. It's amazing. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility that we start to see some really cold air filter up towards Australia in the next coming few weeks and the next month. So we'll see how we go. Last thing I want to talk about is Antarctica. Have a lot of people message me about the Arctic and how they talk about the sea ice melting and stuff like that. Well, sea ice melts in Antarctica and the Arctic being the North Pole, of course, every summer. So this is nothing new. It's just how much it melts and whether it melts more than normal or less than normal. So you can see here, this is Antarctica, of course. If you look at the last 2 years, this is the winter, so about 15 million square kilometres of sea ice, and then it melts in the summer down to about 2, and then it goes back up to about 15. So this is normal pattern, and this happens in the north and it happens in the south. At the moment in the north it's below average and has been below average. It's been declining since the warm PDO started in 1979. And on the other hand, Antarctica has been increasing, and as you can see now, we're at 1.25 million kilometres above normal, which is actually a record for this time of year, for the winter. So I shudder to think what it's going to be in September at the peak of the ice. And you can see last September was extremely high, well above normal. That's last September there, and we're well on track at the moment to meet that again or even eclipse it. So we'll just keep an eye on that and see how we go. But that's basically, in a nutshell, sea ice. This is sea ice, of course. This is not the Antarctic ice shelf. This is sea ice that's in the sea. And again, we're low in the north and we're higher in the south. And if you look at the global sea ice area as a whole, we're actually a little bit above. So it's not as bad a situation as you would have heard in the press, or climate scientists try to say that we're doomed. This is normal behaviour. It's just a matter of whether the anomalies are larger than normal, smaller than normal, but it is coming back. We're definitely seeing Antarctica increase at a rapid rate. So we'll just wait and see how that all pans out down the track. But yeah, again, guys, if you've got any questions or anything like that, you can go to my weather site and you can just check my weather site, avweatherforecast.com, and you can send me a message through there, and yeah, you'll be able to contact me through there. Alright, until next time, I'll speak to them.